Hey folks, Nathan here. Welcome to Nate's Favorite Deck Building Games. We continue our look here at Marvel Legendary by moving into 2017 and checking out that year's two small expansions before we check out the big expansion X-Men in our next episode. This time we look at Legendary Marvel Noir and Legendary Spider-Man Homecoming. Yes, Spider-Man Homecoming is the first of these expansions actually based specifically on a Marvel Cinematic Universe film. Now, as usual, this being a small expansion, we're going to have our small rule supplements. You will need the base games to be able to play, or at least one of the base games to be able to play here. And again, we're going to have 4 new schemes, 2 new masterminds, 2 new villain groups, and 5 new heroes. Our new schemes this time: Silence the Witnesses, Hidden Heart of Darkness, 5 Families of Crime, and Find the Split Personality Killer. For our 2 new villain groups, we have Goblin's Freak Show, and we have X-Men Noir. For our 2 new masterminds, each with a mastermind card and 4 new mastermind tactics, as usual, we have the Goblin Underworld Boss, and we have Charles Xavier, Professor of Crime. As for our heroes, we have a mixture of affiliations here. We have 2 from Marvel Knights, starting with Luke Cage Noir and Daredevil Noir. Then for the X-Men, we have Angel Noir. Then we have, for the Spider Friends, the Spider-Man Noir. And then finally, for Avengers, we have Iron Man Noir. Now, we don't have a lot of new mechanics this time around. One of our new keywords is Investigate. This allows us to look at the top 2 cards of our deck. Normally, it may tell you somewhere else to look, and look for whatever it says afterwards. So in this case, Investigate for a tech card means look at the top 2 cards of your deck for a tech card. If you find one, you get to put it into your hand. Any other cards, or if neither of them met that condition, you can put them back onto the top and or bottom of that deck in any order, which lets you set up things for the future. And yes, that does allow you to set up some other places when it tells you to look somewhere other than your regular deck. We also have a new concept here of hidden witnesses. So in this case, for instance, Fancy Dan, his ambush ability when he's first pulled from the villain deck and goes into the city is Fancy Dan captures 3 hidden witnesses. Hidden witnesses are basically just bystanders, except they're put face down underneath whatever it says captures them. Usually it's a villain, sometimes it's the mastermind or a scheme, but they're face down. And you can't actually fight that thing, the mastermind, the villain, whatever, until you have rescued the hidden witnesses. To do that, you pay 2 recruit on your turn, as many times as you want, and each time you can use that to rescue that hidden witness. And otherwise, it works just like any other bystander in terms of getting the effect from rescuing them, the effects if they wind up being pulled away by escaping villains, all that kind of stuff. Victory points, everything else. It's just the fact that while they're out there, they're face down. And you could have a villain that has some face-up bystanders behind them and some face-down hidden witnesses. That is totally okay. So the Noir expansion's not a bad one. It just doesn't really change up very much. Meanwhile, we get a substantial change to the look of the game with a lot of photo-based cards, screen capture-based cards, with Spider-Man Homecoming. That is also a small expansion, so just a small rule supplement. As usual, for a small expansion, we're talking about 4 new schemes, 2 new villain groups, 2 new masterminds, and 5 new heroes. Our 4 new schemes, which all look a little different now because I got pictures from the film, are Scavenge Alien Weaponry, Distract the Hero, Explosion at the Washington Monument, and Fairy Disaster. Our 2 new villain groups are the Salvagers and Vulture Tech. We then have our 2 new masterminds. We have Vulture, and we have Adrian Toomes. But by this point in time, 2017's large expansion, X-Men, had come out, which introduced Epic Masterminds, which is basically 4 mastermind tactics. That doesn't change. Your regular mastermind card, that hasn't changed, but the mastermind card's reverse has an epic mastermind that is tougher to defeat. So we have an epic mastermind version of Adrian Toomes and an epic version for Vulture. As for our heroes, for Spider Friends, we have 3. We have high-tech Spider-Man, that is Spider-Man once he gets the MCU spider suit from Iron Man. Peter Parker Homecoming, which is basically him in his regular spider suit. Peter's allies, including his aunt, of course. For the Avengers affiliation, the Team Avengers, we have Tony Stark. And then, oddly enough, unaffiliated, I guess because he's more Stark Industries than he is Avengers, we have Happy Hogan. As for new mechanics, we have Danger Sense. Danger Sense will always be followed by a number. That tells you how many cards to reveal from the top of the villain deck, and for each villain that you've revealed, you get +1 attack. Once you're done, you put them back on top of the villain deck in any order, which lets you sort of stack the deck, so to speak, for the next few upcoming turns. You then have some cards that say Striker. A Striker is going to get a +1 attack for each of the Master Strikes, hence Striker, in the KO pile or stacked next to the Mastermind, depending on how the game has required you to get rid of them once they've been used. And some of them will say Double Striker, which gives you +2. Some will say Triple Striker, which gives you +3. And in this case, it's on a Mastermind, which is dangerous to you, but you can see that also on Hero to give you an advantage. So as the Master Strikes are coming down and kicking your butt, maybe you're getting a bit more resilient in going after the bad guys. So it can affect both sides, but it's always based on the number of Master Strikes that have come into play. And yes, I did say Master Strikes that are in the KO pile or next to the Mastermind. That's the normal rules. But you do have some specific Masterminds that do weird things with the Master Strikes, like Galactus. Don't worry, it covers those in the rules to let you know what to do in those cases. You'll also see the Wall Crawl keyword is back from Paint the Town Red and Secret Wars Volume 2. That just means when you recruit this card, you can put it immediately on top of your deck. Lastly, we have the Coordinate keyword. Man, Peter Parker Homecoming's Something Is Happening card has a lot of keywords on it, doesn't it? We've used it as an example multiple times here. Coordinate is something you actually see in the Legendary Encounters games, like the Alien game, for instance. Basically what Coordinate means is that if it's not your turn, and this is sitting in your hand, but you want to help the other player whose turn it is, you can take this and basically discard it and draw a new card to replace it. But as you're discarding it, it allows that player whose turn it is to play a copy of this card as if they played that card this turn and get the benefits out of it. Now, one thing to keep in mind about that is a little bit different than a Legendary Encounters game is that in this case, you can actually choose to refuse to let someone use a Coordinate card to help you. So if they offer it, you can say no. They have to keep the card. They're not able to discard it and draw a card to replace it. And if you are playing the final showdown mode of the game at the very end, you're not allowed to use Coordinate cards during the showdown. If by chance you're playing a single-player game or a solo game, then basically what it just means is that once per turn you can discard a card that says Coordinate in order to draw a card. So you still get the benefit of getting rid of it and getting a new card to replace it. You're just not doing that to help anybody, or help yourself for that matter, beyond just swapping out the card. So Spider-Man Homecoming is a nice new set that introduces some weird photo-based cards, kind of like the Arrow crossover pack for the DC deck building game, but brings back some fun mechanics and gives us a few new ones. Of the two small expansions for 2017, I definitely would recommend going with Spider-Man Homecoming over Noir, although both do have their merits. Might as well get both like I did, right? Anyway, next time we'll check out the big expansion for 2017 and close out that year by looking at X-Men.